Today, Congress hauls in three titans of big tech: Zuckerberg, Dorsey, and Pichai.
Sports merchandising giant Fanatics closing a $320 million funding round this morning.
Assets, they're highly volatile, see Bitcoin, and therefore not really useful as a store of value, and they're not backed by anything. They're more of an asset for speculation. So they're also not particularly in use as a means of payment. It's more a speculative asset that's essentially a substitute for gold rather than for the dollar.
Chair Powell, I'd like to probe a little bit deeper on central bank digital currencies, and in particular the need for a secure digital ID for participants. I believe that both of you are on the record as acknowledging that an anonymous, untraceable digital dollar is not a viable option for our country.
And finally, investing heavyweight Fidelity wants to sponsor a Bitcoin ETF, though it's unclear if the SEC would sign off.
The raise bumps the company's valuation to $12.8 billion. That's more than double the previous level from just last August.
Fidelity is applying to launch a Bitcoin ETF in the latest sign of the money manager's commitment to crypto.
That was Fed Chair Jay Powell earlier this week, warning of the risks associated with cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin down about 10% this week.
Or the free world, because its ability to be abused for money laundering, terrorism financing, ransomware, and so on. Is that principally correct?
This is through a subsidiary of Fidelity. The ETF, if approved, would track the price of Bitcoin. And the crypto industry has been waiting for an ETF to get the green light. They say it's another entry point for Bitcoin investing, and there have been plenty of applications, including one just last week from Van Eck, but none have been approved by the SEC so far.
Joining us now is Michael Rubin, Executive Chairman of Fanatics. I don't think you said it, Michael, but some people think this is probably the last round of financing you'll need before you do something else like go public.
Fidelity has really been a pioneer in the crypto space, led by its CEO, Abigail Johnson, whose grandfather founded the company 75 years ago. Johnson has talked about her interest and support for crypto, and I'm told she is really the driving force behind the firm's initiatives. That has included launching a separate company, Fidelity Digital Assets, 3 years ago, to handle custody and trades. Fidelity also has a partnership with Coinbase so investors can check their balances and make charitable donations in Bitcoin, and it lets people pay with crypto in the Fidelity cafeteria.
I don't think I am on the record for that, but I'll go on the record now for it.
After surging over the past year, joining us now is Brian Brooks, former active controller of the currency. You saw my expression there, Brian. That's very perplexing to me.
Johnson also drove a project to start Bitcoin mining in New Hampshire. Back when the crypto's price was around $180, it's now trading around $52,000.
Nor am I on the record, but I would agree that we need to be very careful about the use of a digital currency for illicit finance, and an anonymous currency makes that much harder to control.
The crypto industry has been advocating for an ETF for a long time. They say that it's easier in some cases to get exposure to Bitcoin prices without actually holding the cryptocurrency themselves. So for average retail investors, they say it could be easier. But since this Bitcoin ETF effort really started, there have been a lot of other ways that have popped up that might actually reduce the need for a Bitcoin ETF.
So on the other hand, I believe that the Chinese approach to digital currencies that give the government immediate and unconditional access to all transaction information will be equally unacceptable to Americans and to most citizens of the free world.
You have the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which is sort of seen as a proxy for investing in Bitcoin. There's also things like PayPal recently launching the ability to buy crypto. So since that effort really started, there's other ways that have popped up. So some say it's probably less important than it was 2 or 3 years ago. The SEC, meanwhile, has cited things like risk, volatility, investor protection for reasons that they have not approved a Bitcoin ETF so far.
Look, I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, right now we're 100% focused on just building the most incredible company possible. I think going public is an option for us that, we talk about a lot, but it's not something we're focused on today. We're focused on building a business, but I think we're well financed and have a lot of growth capital to continue to grow.
What are you going to use it for exactly? And you would think that given the pandemic year, you wouldn't need to be doing a lot of investment, but you had by far your best year ever. And I'll tell you why. Okay, I will give him the first statement that it's highly volatile, and at this point, it's tough to use for transactions. But then he says it's not really a store of value, and then says it's essentially a substitute for gold.
And therefore, a digital dollar will be crucially dependent on having an effective authentication component. That is a secure and legally traceable and maximally privacy-preserving way for participants to authenticate themselves as a unique, legally traceable individual.
So the 4,000, 5,000 year store of value that we know historically is gold. And he just said it's like gold, but it's not a store of value. So does he not think gold is a store of value? And with what the Fed's doing right now, is $1? Is he really making the case that that's a store of value? You got any plans to do anything with NFTs? They're obviously a big deal for sports. Do you believe in the whole concept, Mike?
Well, hey, Joe, you're thinking about it exactly the right way. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So, first of all, as a store of value, I would just say there's a reason people have flocked to Bitcoin in the last year, right? Which is something else happened in the last year. And that is that we increased the money supply by 40%. So when you do that in a world of supply and demand, it means that the dollar is at least a 40% less good store of value than it was a year ago. And that is one of the reasons people look to Bitcoin.
So what would you do besides apparel? What do you got novelty yet? Or what's really the big growth that's vertical and not? I mean, I just go into. I watch these college guys, and I like the 76ers. I watch, I like all the NBA teams.
You like the Sixers? The Sixers are your team. I don't even like the Sixers for your team.
Okay, all right. 9 out of 10. You're gonna. Speaking of which. Are you going to do anything before Thursday's trade deadline? Do you need to do anything?
But, Joe, the point I really want to make is the dollar may not actually be backed by anything. Obviously, we went off the gold standard in the Nixon administration. But cryptocurrencies actually are backed by something. They're backed by underlying networks. And what you're buying when you buy a crypto token, whether it's Bitcoin or anything else, is you're buying a piece of a financial network that's being built to transact all kinds of stuff. And the number of things that have gone on chain in the last 2 years is enormously high. That's why the cryptocurrency market today is almost a $2 trillion market. I believe in the wisdom of crowds personally, and I think that there's kind of like forces of the future at work here and then forces of the status quo. I think the crowds are telling you that these networks are where finance is going in the future. I'd want to be part of that.
A secure digital ID, and it must be backed by a trusted court system and a clear legal regime to determine the conditions under which the participants might be unmasked. As a digital dollar, if it's to be used internationally, we're then going to need a digital ID system that operates internationally.
There's books written about the madness of crowds. That's the thing. And they always go back to tulip bulbs, et cetera. So you either love crowds or you hate them. But you point out that because Bitcoin, what was it, 2008, 2009, something like that, it's been around. Every transaction's on that blockchain. And because of that, that's why you think it has the most value. The first one to get to $1 trillion.
We're only beginning to think carefully about these things. And it's going to be a careful, detailed, and probably lengthy process of consideration. One that we're investing quite a bit in now, and that I expect will last some time.
Bitcoin was the first token to show you that finance could be done on a networked basis as opposed to at the bank. There are a lot of other cryptocurrencies that have done other things with that concept, but Bitcoin was the first, and it got early adoption.
It's not possible to catch every piece of harmful content without infringing on people's freedoms in a way that I don't think that we'd be comfortable with as a society.
So when people say, gosh, it's not good for anything but speculation, I would just argue the reason that there was something like $61 billion worth of Bitcoin transacted yesterday is because that network has been adopted by people who used to go to the bank or the dealer to transact.
Brian, we'll have you back. This is the $1 trillion question. Can you fight City Hall? That's what scares. Can you fight City Hall? If Yellen and Powell decide that this is not kosher, not going to be something we accept, can they stop it, or is it already too big and too powerful and too
hey, Joe, you can
decentralized?
you can absolutely fight City Hall. Remember, every mayor and every taxi cab commissioner in America tried to stop Uber, but 50 million Americans wanted it, and now we have it. It's going to be the same thing with crypto.
I think it's something that's worth exploring. I've not done so, but we would be glad to have further conversations with you about how something like this could work. There's certainly a problem, as you've mentioned.